Hey guys, welcome back to Comm 101. We took a summer vacation, as it were, for a couple weeks in the middle of our syllabus, but let's get back to it with week 11. So on August 12th, it was announced in a letter to Lonnie Bunch, the secretary of the Smithsonian Institution, that the White House is now reviewing, under Executive Order 14253, the Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History order, that various Smithsonian collections and exhibits are to be reviewed to ensure alignment with the president's directive to celebrate American exceptionalism. It is worth noting that, much like Carla Hayden of the Library of Congress, Mr. Bunch is the first African American as the secretary of the institution, and he's the first historian to hold the post. The Organization of American Historians, as well as anyone who's ever read a book, have expressed deep concerns about this because, as we all know, that progress and exceptionalism always begin with censorship of ideas that we don't like. One person who has apparently never read a book, though I'm not surprised by this fact, is Jillian Michaels, the woman most well known for 17 seasons of screaming in the face of people with serious health problems for television ratings. Now, apparently she gets booked for political panels on CNN now. You know, I take back what I've said about Donald Trump's bad-mouthing of the news, because if this is what CNN is doing, he isn't wrong. Now, while there are hundreds, if not thousands, of journalists out there putting their lives on the line every day, including the 4 Al Jazeera journalists who were slaughtered last week in Gaza by a targeted airstrike that hit a tent used by journalists, the knuckleheads in the CNN boardroom are deciding to give Jillian Michaels a microphone to talk about the arts, race, history, and censorship. What began as a segment about the president's takeover of the Kennedy Center Honors and the arts led to a broader discussion about the push for culture change coming from the White House and its impact on the institutions that are meant to be apolitical. Check out my episode on the Library of Congress from week 4. The television trainer, who has faced multiple lawsuits with regard to false advertising of her snake oil supplements, accused the host, Abby Phillip, of racializing a discussion about the arts, despite the fact that the only person who brought up race during the discussion was Michaels herself. Ultimately, Phillip was able to get the discussion back on track, but there are a couple important things to note from this whole exchange and the fact that Jillian Michaels was ever part of this panel to begin with. First is a reminder that these institutions, the Library of Congress, the Kennedy Center, the Smithsonian, the NEA, they're meant to be apolitical institutions. And while, yes, their heads are usually appointed by the government officials, ultimately they are stewards of these organizations. And most of the time, the people that are leading these organizations have worked for them for years before heading them, and they have dedicated their lives, like in the case of Lonnie Bunch and Carla Hayden, to the promotion of whatever type of organization it is, Lonnie Bunch being a historian, etc. Second is part of a larger discussion about one of the few things that I think Donald Trump is actually correct about: how very much hurt some of the unthoughtful media producers have done to this country. Case in point, Mark Burnett, who gave us The Apprentice. The Biggest Loser aired for 17 seasons and had to have created at least a few hundred eating disorders in its wake. People with serious health conditions were belittled, then they went home without support, most of whom gained the weight back almost immediately. The New York Times and the New York Post both did exposés on the show. There's even a 3-part Netflix documentary on air right now, but Netflix does a 3-part series on just about everything. Several contestants were hospitalized during the course of the show, but hey, Jillian Michaels is a multimillionaire. And for some reason, the board at CNN thinks that that's a good enough reason to let her be part of a political panel during these pretty difficult and divisive times. I'm all for a good story. I'm all for making good television. But we need to start realizing that there are consequences to our actions. Thanks for watching. See you next time on Comm 101.